Hi, my name is Kevin, and I want to talk to you about a little bit about my cloud native journey. There's probably some buzzwords in there. I will not take many responsibilities for too many buzzwords. But I also want to start off by saying that I'm not getting paid for this, so please help. But I think it's just really important because I'm doing this just because I think it's fun, and I really like to share what I learned, and also just because I think this is actually something that really will benefit you guys as well as it has benefited me. I also like to organize meetups. I organize Copenhagen JavaScript and Google developer groups, Cloud Copenhagen. So I really like the whole thing of bringing people together and sharing and figuring out stuff, because sometimes it can be easy to read on the internet and then get into this echo chamber of what is good and bad and so forth. So I will just start off by saying I'm really price conscious and time efficient. That's if people maybe have to describe me, they maybe say it's too much, or you can also say I'm really cheap and lazy. That's another way to put it. Because I don't care about you show me how you're doing it, or I really want to just get down to try it out on my own to really feel if it's something I want to use. So my goal is when I figure out something, I want to set a time limit, but I always want to improve my tools, but I really have some few things that measure them. I want to deploy everything. That's pretty broad, but it should be really fast and without locking myself in, and it should also be cheap. So that's always been my goal, because first off, being a young person, you basically have no money, and I don't think anybody sometimes have that much time in the spare time. So that's just my goals for doing it on my own. So my life started pretty simple, PHP hosting here. We haven't tried that because that's definitely cheap. It's easy, but sometimes it doesn't really scale. And my first experience was actually a digital agency. They were running some servers in their own data center, and there was this one guy that set up the servers, and of course he was using FreeBSD because he was really passionate about it. And he was also using jails, which I at that point didn't understand and didn't know what it was. But jails is what actually was the first idea of this running containers, running it contained. But the problem was he left, and then I don't know what could be a worse combi of giving somebody like me all the servers, because I didn't have any idea. I just wanted to keep it going, and there was actually problems also where we just restart and we would just pray, and then it's we can restart the server because we couldn't figure out how to migrate. So the problem was actually also that we had a customer, and they were all using PHP and WordPress. Not my decision, but they were using WordPress, and some of the customers just installed a newsletter plugin. And this newsletter plugin would just send out to all the customers, but it would hit all the servers with AJAX requests. So one customer would take down all the other customers. And there were some pretty significant customers as well running those. So imagine our frustration when we see somebody starts running the newsletter, and we're just seeing all our websites go down, and we're telling I'm going in, killing all the PHP processes that I can see. That's just terrible, and definitely not a great way to run customers. So, but I had this idea of could we actually make it so that each customer had their own server? But that wasn't price efficient enough for this digital agency, so that was a big no. So basically, scaling something that easy is super difficult. I worked at another startup, and there people were doing PHP as well, and I was hired to do front end, and I discovered that this bacon stuff, it's actually pretty cool that you can package stuff down to do it on a consistent basis, so everyone was working on the same stuff across the company. But beware, my nightmare was we had just 3 GB blobs every time, so I would once a week package our latest dependencies into this VM, and then we will upload to Vagrant Cloud, and it was just so difficult. And the most problem was we wouldn't be using these virtual machines to actually deploy stuff. So I was configuring our deployment environments to be as close to production but in production we didn't use this at all. So imagine like our frustrations, like trying to then like figure out how to take this vagrant, which was slow and boring, and then trying to replicate to something that was slow and boring. So like deploying super difficult. It's like doesn't recommend it. But then I discovered this like Docker, and like I was so fascinated by it because like this is going to solve all my problems. Definitely like vagrant, out with that, in with Docker. And the first Docker meetup was actually like so popular, and a meetup at that time I didn't know that even though the meetup is still doing, just still show up. So I didn't go because I thought like, oh, there wasn't space for me. But then like the problem was like the next meetup, the organizer was too busy already to organize the second one. That was actually how I got started organizing meetups, was because like I was so enthusiastic to attend a Docker meetup that I had to organize it myself to attend it. But okay, that's how it goes. But at that time, actually, in January 2015, like there was this guy called Mark Coleman, and he gave an instruction on how to do this Docker deployment, and I will get back to him. But also in February of 2015, we actually did a meetup about how to host these Docker containers, because like it was pretty simple to get started with it, building it, but figuring out how to actually then take it to production, that was still a big question for all of us, and we just did a whole meetup about just deploying. So I was like, there's somebody who has to solve this. So of course what you do is that you make a startup, like trying to solve it. And it was pretty interesting because like 2015, still pretty new. Like Docker is maybe 1.5 years old, and I would say like Docker, the early years of the software, but that part, and like we were trying to figure out with the registry version 2.0, and we had so many problems, but we made a demo. It was perfect. Like we could actually deploy a website in 2 minutes, arbitrary in a Docker container. It was like success. Like everyone wants this. And then when we went out to talk to all our friends and something like that, and it was like, what is Docker? And we were like, because we thought like this basically solved all our problems. And we also we kind of got onto something like we wanted something simple, but we also needed something to scale it. And the problem was actually now we have to scale it, because our deal was that we would take the customer's containers and run it on our infrastructure. Because I knew that we could run it on spot instances. And actually, if you run containers and spot instances in regions where it's night, you can actually get down to just 10% of the price of the machine in AWS. So imagine the arbitrage you can make, and you could just like run like multiple versions of the customers, because even though you're just paying 10% of the price for actually running these containers. So that was like the idea. Like we tried to convince people, and actually we convinced the Y company to actually give us an interview. So like out of like 7,000 applicants, we were one of the 100 for YC Summer 15 to come and talk to them. And we basically like we started that deal in February, and we ended up like going to the interview in May, so only 3 months really. And when we got there, like they couldn't understand why we wouldn't manage the customer service, why would we host it on our infrastructure. And we couldn't simply explain it good enough, like why we wouldn't do it. And they have funded a lot of startups that try to maintain the customer service, but none of them has really worked out, luckily. But the funny thing was also at that time that we were really battling Docker Swarm, Kubernetes, and I actually did throw them the Swarm because like I thought like if it's built into Docker, it has to win. And the funny thing is like you can see sometimes like in hindsight like that's sometimes easy. It's maybe not the right abstraction when you have to do something really complicated. And also, for example, like Docker is like something multi-tenancy. Like that's so difficult. Like we didn't even like think about it at that time, but like putting multiple customers next to each other to allow big scaling. One customer could easily hack the other customers, and like that was something we maybe had needed the funding for to figure out. But to my surprise, like I actually found this startup called Hyper.sh, and it's a Chinese startup, and like I would say like they was the most genius people. Like I wrote to them on the intercom, I was like, I cannot get my hands down to the keyboard because I'm so amazed. Because like it was just like what I basically like felt. They basically solved all the problems that we had at our startup. But the problem was like they basically implemented Kubernetes, and they took like hypervisors. So they basically like implemented hardware level. I'm not that clever, but they basically made it so like each hypervisor only started one container. So they made it super secure. The problem was that they took the whole Kubernetes API and then implemented the Docker API on top of it. So they didn't have anything with replicas. So basically, like each part, like each container were unique. You couldn't scale it up easily. So like they took something really genius afterwards, and you see like, and then made it really dumb. And and also just like the communication between like me and the founders, like we couldn't communicate. Like I was speaking like this, and they were like answering in East, and it was like really difficult. And they didn't implement any WebSocket APIs to like figure out like so we could actually do some like hot reloading of a load balancer. Every time I had to figure out if a container were down, I had to request the REST API. Terrible design, but they were genius. And actually, like they later on went on to create hypervisor containers called Kata containers. They probably got bored or something like that, but they closed it a couple of years ago. But they did also make one thing that was impressive. They made pay per second containers deployment. Like, and this is like 2016. They were like, you pay only for the seconds your containers is running, and you can run any container. So even though like later on, like, or not later on, actually 2 years before Amazon actually launched in 2014, and there you had to use their arbitrary like runtime, and it was like often like years old, but it was actually pretty unique. But the problem is like when you only pay per second, it doesn't really scale. You need a lot of customers to actually pay for this. And you only pay per second, you're still having to pay for the service coming up and down. It's like it's the problem. But Amazon Lambda, I've been using that since 2016, and it's amazing. Like you can basically launch something and only pay for what you actually use. But the problem was it was always like some little bit weird thing, like it was proprietary. You couldn't test it. There was a 50 megabyte compressed limit on zip files uploaded. You had to use the API gateway that then had to be connected to a gateway gateway 56 to do the DNS and something like that. It's so complicated, and didn't even figure out how to test it. So that all like serverless wasn't for me at all. And I definitely began to look at Kubernetes when we were launching this startup called Connected Cars. And I also began teaching Kubernetes workshop, and I really saw that this Kubernetes was actually something that people understood, and it solved it in a great way with the great API. But there's something like about Kubernetes that you may also understand. It's like it's awesome, but it's not cheap. So we're getting close to it. Like it needs to be running wherever I want, really fast, but it also needs to be cheap. And like I've written an article about like, can I run a one node cluster in Google Cloud? And yeah, you can, but it's like not really what it's made for. So I actually began to use cloud functions, and this was actually like now they're using containers underneath. They must be, and this is something like that was actually beginning to be something interesting, because cloud functions it was really fast, it was really easy. But I actually signed up for it in containers, and I requested access to it in Europe, and I got just to like be pulled on like that. Yeah, it will be launched next quarter, and then like I'm calling Google again like when is it? Yeah, next quarter, and like they were having problems scaling it, but I couldn't actually replicate it locally either. So we were into this like proprietary login of like I had to be on Google Cloud, use Google Cloud functions, and use it their way or the highway. So like conclusion, can't control runtime. This is the opposite of deploying everything. Like if you had to, for example, use anything like FMPG or something like that, you had to deploy it to that runtime. So later on, I found out like Knative. Knative was actually now we're beginning to like we have the software, and I gave a demo about it last year in November, and this was super awesome. Like it was using Knative, this framework, this allow this serverless, the whole idea of like spinning up a container based on requests, and it's running on top of Istio. And this was beginning to see like we have an API here, we have something that can actually do the work that I need, but it will still be running on top of like Kubernetes. So we're basically spinning up so much software that I don't believe anyone has the full capacity to take the whole like overview of like Kubernetes, Istio, Knative, like the stack becomes like higher than its wide. So we need a tool that basically is quick to deploy, quick, and that we can run wherever it is. So I think like into Cloud Run, like this is something like I was doing a workshop together with somebody called Martin, Swedish guy, lives in San Francisco now, and he was like giving a workshop about like cloud functions. And he was like, if anybody wants to be introduced to something cool, then just give me your email and we will send it. So I actually got an invite to Cloud Run and I was pretty amazed by it. Sadly, I was like, you're told you cannot tell anybody, so I was going around like this, like, I want to tell anybody, but it's like, I couldn't tell anybody because like, it was hidden and they just launched it like last year. No, like this year, sorry, in April at Cloud Next. So, what is Cloud Native if you have to? And basically, it takes a Docker container, you listen on the environment port, and you pay per request in gigabyte seconds. That's all. That's all you need to know about. Like, obviously, there's a lot of other things, cool things, but like, take this. You can get free HTTPS automatically provisioned if you're using it through like Webmaster Tool. You just have to authenticate your domain. So Cloud Run is like building on top of like other services to Google Cloud where they didn't have to reinvent it. So if you're already using Webmaster Tool for Google Analytics or AdWords in ad, you have already authenticated. It's built on top of Stackdriver, so you get all the logging infrastructure, all the metrics with Stackdriver. Super easy if you already know a little bit about how to run these queries that can actually be pretty advanced. Obviously, if you have Stackdriver, you can also export to BigQuery and so forth. And you're actually beginning to like have something that starts as super simple, but can expand to something that really scales. So I basically moved everything to Cloud Run. I took my Amazon Lambda things down. I think like that funny thing about Amazon Lambda is like I actually also did a workshop about that, but I never figured out to teach anybody how to successfully deploy something to that. But I have done that with Cloud Run. So I want to give you an example of how you actually do these things. So basically here we have a command. It's pretty long, but we say gcloud beta run deploy Cloud Run continues to run. That's just the name. And then we give it our image, and that has to be on either Google Cloud Registry or on Docker Hub. But Docker has, and you can see like here I'm using a short shot because like this is supposed to be running like continuous deployment. Then I'm telling it where it should be running and EU West 1, and that is actually managed. That's because like in you can actually run this also on Google Cloud, Google Kubernetes Engine, because it is just Knative. So Google will actually do a lot of the hard work for you. But I tried it and I didn't find it that particularly easy, so it didn't tick that box. But right now you have these 4 regions where you can deploy it to, and the really cool thing is that Europe is here as well. Like I think that's often been the killer feature, but the killer thing that didn't always like turn out to why like something like Amazon Lambda didn't work out at the start because they were only in San Francisco or like the West Coast. The cool thing also is like Cloud SQL, because like these serverless functions, they often don't run inside your VPC. So sometimes if you have a SQL server running, you don't want to expose it to the internet. That's sometimes not the best way. But Cloud Run then also have a way to easily add a connection to a Cloud Run server, Cloud SQL server. And of course also you can use YAML if you want to. You can also not do it, but the whole thing idea about like infrastructure as code, you can do that. So for example, like here you can see an example of like how a manifest for a Cloud Run actually looks like. And you can see that it's actually the Knative Cloud manifest. So you are basically running something that you can take and deploy it in multiple environments. And you basically take the command that looks like this, and that's how you basically run it and replace it on Google Cloud. So I think with that, I want to show you a little bit about something I made. So here I'm actually like I built a small web server. Says Cloud Native development version 1, and it's basically just listening on the port. And I also made a Docker container, and it's super simple. So what we could do now, we can actually just like skip the whole thing of like setting up CI, CD, and actually just like build it completely from our own machine. Take the, like, we can build it in a way we can say we can upload a manifest to Cloud Build without like creating anything. So here we're saying deploy. So here I have a command that says to gcloud build submit, and this is running on Cloud Build. And the cool thing about this is that we're actually then just taking our zip file, so we can see here deploy, and then uploading that, zipping it, uploading to Cloud Build, and then running it. So while it's running, you can just take a little bit of a look of what we're actually executing. So here we can see that we're starting out by building our container, then we're pushing it to the Google Container Registry, and then we are here saying gcloud beta run deploy, just as as you've seen before. So you can see it here is building, it's already known it a little bit, so now it's deploying. And it didn't actually do anything on Google Cloud, except for a small thing. I did activate APIs. That's some of the small things about Google Cloud. Like that you have to click manually the button to enable these APIs. So we basically now here have the output as well, and we have a URL. So we can see here, this is like the so here we have our Cloud Run running on Google Cloud, and I'm just echoing out the environment variables. And we can see here it's basically like responding really quickly. I can actually do a small trick here because like I actually try to load like see how many requests I can throw at it, and the problem is actually like my computer cannot spin up as many concurrent requests towards that this actually can handle. So I did it in the cloud, from the cloud. So here you can see I did a small demo, and here I'm doing 1100 requests per second towards this like website. And what I did was in here, I actually defined that my container only take a concurrency of 10 containers. So each container only takes 10 requests. So that means that when I'm doing 1100, and depending on how long they actually take, you can see it takes like 1/3 of a second. It actually means that if I'm doing a little bit of head calculation, it means that I'm running 30 containers simultaneously serving this traffic. And the maximum is actually 1,000 containers per project, so you can actually scale this up more than. But obviously, Google also needs time to scale up. And the last things I just want to show you is like a little bit about here. For example, is the error you will see when you are basically like trying to deploy this without having to enable these APIs. But the cool thing is you can actually run the same commands from the Git project that I will share with you later. You can run it and then it should actually work. So I think basically the conclusion is Google is basically doing this as a loss leader, because like the law of numbers is really on. Nobody can actually deploy a solution like that because you're basically giving you money to use this. Because if you're only paying cents for this, like who can earn money on you paying Google cents to run this stuff? That's because like they think that you will use this to scale up. But it's a great benefit for you because like, you can basically use this and you're basically getting so much value for basically nothing. Also, serverless is really focusing on shipping. Like you have to focus on like shipping. Do it quick, do it often. Don't fall for the hacker news trolls. They basically also spread about like 500 comments about like how terrible serverless is. Don't believe them. They just don't have experience actually doing all this because it's not actually what they're telling you. Do try to do configure CI/CD because like the last thing I want to show you is just like actually did also set up CI/CD with this, and I can show you just a small example of like changing this file here to version 2. Will take me around 50 seconds to deploy, and I just do commit and master through the GitHub API here with That's my favorite way to program. And I think the cool thing is like it's something I've like been doing more is like deploying each commit. Like why not? If you can deploy for free, it doesn't cost you anything to keep it running. Deploy everything. Deploy branches, tags, everything. You get a unique URL, and then just like clean it up afterwards after like a day or something, and delete it all. Because like once you delete like commit, you just deploy it again. Then I think what I'm telling you is like Cloud Run is something like super cool. Like you should definitely try it. It's something like that basically, if you do this, you're basically skipping multiple steps of what I went through to try to scale up my laziness and cheapness. So please join, and I will talk to you afterwards. Thank you.